Welcome into another playoff edition of Daily Faceoff Live. The show, as always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app, use the code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Live on the DFO YouTube, as always, looking for your questions. And today, they can be trade-related because Frank Seravalli's got his first trade targets board of the season. You come out of the long weekend hot, Frank.
Let's go. Great Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S. and important weekend of hockey, but we're nearing the Stanley Cup final here. 28 teams of 32 are already in full-fledged offseason mode. Another 2 potentially on the way in short order. Giddy up.
I believe we're like 30 or 29 days from the draft, which is great. Stephen Ellis has a new draft rankings at DFO. He'll join our show a little bit later on this week to discuss them. Frank, before we get into the Stanley Cup playoffs and all the trade talk, I just wanted to start by giving some love to the Minnesota Frost. They won their second straight Walter Cup. They are champions of the PWHL, still the only champions the PWHL knows. They did it in front of a crowd north of 11,000 in Minnesota. 2-1 overtime win. Congrats to the Frost, their head coach Ken Klee, and the entire organization.
Yeah, big week for the Klee family. His son, Ken's son, won the USHL Clark Cup as well for Muskegon. And while we're throwing some niceties to start the show, what a nice way to start the week for me. Happy birthday to Ben Stelter. You would have been 9 today, and we're thinking of you, Ben.
Yeah, they're asking for obviously donations to the Ben Stelter Foundation, they're just continuing. Mike and Leah doing amazing stuff in the Edmonton community. They're at pretty much every Oilers home playoff game selling Ben Stelter bracelets. So they do amazing stuff there. Our super chats over on Oilers Nation every day go towards the Ben Stelter Foundation as well. Frank, let's dig into the Stanley Cup playoff talk as the Carolina Hurricanes kept their season alive. They're going back to Raleigh for a 5th game in the Eastern Conference Final, and we can all finally put to rest the whole stat about the Canes having not won an Eastern Conference Final game in 20 years.
Off the mat, on the board. And I could think of a few words to describe Game 4 for the Carolina Hurricanes. Patient, methodical, grinding. They dug in. I mean, they brought their shovels to Florida for Game 4. And look, they've got a long way to go to dig themselves out of the hole that they're in. But to your point, and all the games that they've lost in the Eastern Conference Final consecutively, I'd argue that only a handful of them matter because they're with this core. But nonetheless, when it gets to a certain point, whether it's 7 in a row to the Panthers or whether it stretches back further than that to 2019 when Rod Brind'Amour took over, to get on the board is important. You've now slayed that dragon, so to speak, that you've been carrying around with you. So I really like the way that the Canes played in Game 4. I thought they put themselves in a way better position throughout the night to really handle a ferocious Florida forecheck that also, look, to be fair, the Panthers are wounded. And Nico Mikkola and Sam Reinhart back on the ice today skating, which is a very important sign for them. But when you add in a Matthew Tkachuk injury as well, he's obviously not 100%. You can start to pick at the Florida Panthers and their depth a little bit.
Yeah, and you talk about the Panthers and their depth. On the flip side, I kind of like that Rod Brind'Amour just leaned a little bit more on some of his star players yesterday. The minute uptick was noticeable, particularly for Jacob Slavin. On the right side, you see each player's average for Jarvis, Aho, Slavin, and Burns through 3 games, and the minutes they played last night. Jarvis played about 90 seconds more. Aho played north of 2 minutes more, but the Slavin uptick, more than 6 minutes of extra time on ice compared to the first 3 games. And when he was on the ice at 5-on-5, Frank, he controlled 75% of the shots. It was noticeable. He was their best player.
Best pure defender in the NHL, maybe one of the best pure defenders the NHL has ever seen. So beyond that, it's funny because he played 28 minutes on the dot and could have probably played more. There was at least one TV timeout that coming out of it, they didn't have Slavin on the ice to start. So they could continue to go pedal down and try and get back in this series, win Game 5, send it back to Florida for Game 6, see what happens, because not for nothing, this is a Panthers team that did blow a 3-0 series lead last year in the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, the Oilers had the whole drag them back to Alberta thing last year in Game 5 of the series. For the Canes, a little bit different, but that home ice advantage in Game 5, you win this one, and again, you just kind of take it a game at a time. Freddie Anderson was excellent as well. I know there was some talk, should they have played Kochetkov in Game 3 or not? I mean, if the result was even just giving Freddie Anderson some rest, it obviously paid off. He pitches a 20-save shutout in Game 4. Frank.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, it's so much more like the Carolina Hurricanes that we were used to seeing that I thought they were finally able to, for the first time in a long time, dictate the way that game was played.
Yeah. The Edmonton Oilers are going to be looking to go up 3-1 in their series against the Dallas Stars, looking for a third consecutive win here as that series continues in Edmonton. And listen, Frank, maybe it's because the Oilers have all of a sudden become this team that's done it before, and they've played the second most games in the Stanley Cup playoffs the last 3 years. But there seems to be a pretty high sense of optimism around their ability to, I guess, keep the pedal down after their 6-1 win on Sunday afternoon. I would kind of put my hand up and go, hey, last year, 12 months ago, we were sitting here talking about a Dallas team that was up 2-1. And the words we were using were, they seem to be a class above the Edmonton Oilers. It feels like a very similar conversation to what we're having right now. I think it's a good time to remind Oilers fans that momentum does not carry over from game to game. Like, Dallas absolutely has a chance to put themselves right back in this series and regain home ice advantage tonight.
They do, for sure. And shouldn't overlook this Dallas Stars team by any measure, because they are really talented and they just need to have everyone show up and pull on the rope at the same time, which it's been a really disjointed playoffs from that perspective. And there's been a million surprises. To think that we would have gotten to this point and have Stuart Skinner be outplayed or outplay Jake Ottinger as badly as he has, that part has definitely grabbed my attention. But beyond that, look, they need their stars to step up. I mean, I understand the pun. It's intended there, because look at Mikko Rantanen, very quiet Western Conference final again, and he's got 17 points in 5 games. That means the other 11 games so far that he's played in the postseason, he has 4. He needs to be better. The rest of the Dallas Stars group as a whole needs to be better. And they do have a massive opportunity in what's been a very lopsided series. The Edmonton Oilers have trailed a grand total of 14 minutes and 2 seconds so far through the first 3 games. But because they had that crazy comeback in the third period of game 1, they've afforded themselves an opportunity here to go back to Dallas all square, kind of against all odds, given that they've had their doors blown off. They basically have played one good period since the second period of Sunday's game, and Stuart Skinner was a wall. So they've got their work cut out for them. And as lopsided, you're right, as it does feel on the ice, that they could be all tied up after tonight.
Game 4 is the swing game for a reason, right? If Dallas wins tonight, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, best of 3. They have home ice advantage. And hey, could Roope Hintz return? Is Jake Ottinger's best hockey still in front of him? You can start to drum up some positive storylines. If Edmonton can lay the boots to him again, it's 3-1, and it probably feels like 4-0 at that point, right?
Yeah, and nighty-night. And also the Oilers are playing for maybe something a little bit more than that, too. The schedule is on the line as well. If the Oilers... my understanding is if the Oilers lose game 4, then the Stanley Cup final will not begin until June 7th. It could move up a little bit. So you're right. The Ekholm question is interesting. Does Chris Knoblauch go 11-7 and ease Ekholm back into the lineup? Troy Stetcher has been fantastic for the Oilers. There's been lots of positives and no reason to doubt that they'll continue to show up, but it's just, have we heard the last of the Dallas Stars? I don't think I'm convinced of that, and I know you're not either.
No. Just quickly, Chris Knoblauch speaking like 60 seconds ago. No Ekholm tonight. Arvidsson's in for the injured Connor Brown. Calvin Pickard returns in a backup role tonight. No update yet, obviously, on Roope Hintz.
Well, I would guess that Hintz will, at the very least, try it in warm-up again. And beyond that, I think they've afforded themselves a luxury here with Ekholm. Be patient, be greedy as long as you can keep him out. I don't know that you want him to wade back into game 1 of an incredibly intense Stanley Cup final, but let's say you find a way to win game 4. You've now bought yourself some incredible luxury heading into game 5.
Yeah. Let's play a little hot or cold here, Frank. I got a couple of takes I want to throw your way. One of them ties into that Oilers Stars series and the continued elevation of Evan Bouchard. Obviously, he doesn't have his steadying partner, Mattias Ekholm, and it hasn't phased him. He's looked more and more like a true number 1 defenseman as these playoffs have gone on. The idea of him being a $10 million AAV this summer, is that hot or cold? Hot being, yes, it's probably going to happen. It's true. Cold being, no, it's a bridge too far.
It's hot. I have to think with yet another repeat playoff performance, third consecutive postseason of at least 17 points. He's 75 points now in 67 career postseason games, which is an incredible pace. That's a 93-point pace over an 82 game regular season, which is regular season. And beyond that, he's put himself in some incredible company now. 33rd all time, I believe, in postseason points by a defenseman. He has closing in on or just past Rob Blake, who has played double the number of postseason games. And by the way, Rob Blake is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I think the Oilers were hopeful at one point this season that they might have been able to squeeze in Ekholm at 8.5. I think this playoff has probably exploded that pipe dream.
Yeah. Another one. You weren't on the show yesterday, obviously long weekend down in the States, but we did our Islanders offseason preview. And granted, I wrote this question before I saw your trade targets board, Frank, but the idea that the Islanders with Matthew Darche at the helm could take a longer approach here, maybe move out some more established guys. Bo Horvat, the idea he could be available on Long Island, is that hot or cold?
I'd say it's probably lukewarm. My guess is that Matthew Darche is entering into this job with a completely open mind, thinking that there's probably going to need to be a push and pull on both sides of it. Maybe try to get a little bit younger, but also at the same time, you need proper support. And so if the Islanders have any dreams of turning this around relatively quickly and getting back into a competitive posture, then you're going to need someone like Horvat to help carry the mail. And if not, if you're willing to be more patient, then hey, see what you can get for him in a very thin center market.
Yeah, I mean, centers and goalies. We'll talk about it in a bit in your trade targets, but there's a couple of teams that could really have some valuable pieces on their hands this summer. Let's do our offseason preview for today, Frank. It is the Detroit Red Wings, another disappointing playoff-less season in the Motor City, and it has Red Wings fans wondering, Steve Yzerman may be going to get aggressive to try get them out of this funk. And it was interesting, Frank, I went through some of his last few summers to see, like, was there a big swing he made? Did it work? Did it not? The only big trade he's really made in terms of adding a significant piece was the Alex DeBrincat trade from a couple summers ago. And that one actually looks pretty good when you look back on it with hindsight. They gave up a high pick, but DeBrincat seems to be fitting in well. He scores at a decent clip. Kubalik didn't really pan out into much. Like that all makes sense to me. The free agent moves are the ones that have really seemed to be the swings and misses for Steve Yzerman. And not that all of these guys are bad players, but there just hasn't really been that jackpot big hit that totally changes the team. How do you think Yzerman approaches this year's free agency class or trade market? Do you think he gets aggressive? Do you think he stays the course?
I think he has no choice but to be aggressive. I think we've gone this far in the Yzer plan that they need to show significant progress. I thought a significant move in bringing in Todd McClellan, who appeared to buoy this team for a bit of time after Boxing Day, and then they fell off again. I think they've made the mistake of putting the cart before the horse. You see Patrick Kane, he was fine last season, but that's a whipped cream on the sundae, and Vladimir Tarasenko is a cherry on top. Those are for contending teams, not teams that are trying to break in and be playoff teams. You've got to have young players that are part of your core that can help get you there. Yes, you need veteran support, but it has to be more than that. And so Tarasenko is on my trade targets board this year. I don't think he was necessarily a fit, and a career low 11 goals. Now, it's got to start on the back end for Detroit. That's their biggest thing. If you want to pull that board up again, but Ben Sherratt, Justin Hall, it's also the guys, those are the signings that Detroit has had on their back end as free agents. I mean, you can look at the other guys in Kopp and Compher. You know, you would think that Compher is another potential trade target this summer, but it shows to me with Sherratt and Hall how poorly the Detroit Red Wings have evaluated talent on defense. Those are the two guys that you sign. You also traded away Philip Roenick, and you traded and had to give up pieces to move Jake Wallman, who is obviously starring in the playoffs for the Edmonton Oilers on their back end after being a quick flip from San Jose. It's astounding how poor of a job Detroit has done evaluating their defense, and they need at the pro level to be significantly better. They're fine at the amateur level, but pro scouting on defense is piss poor.
I know we kind of said he's a guy who might be ripe for an overpay this summer, but doesn't Aaron Ekblad feel like a Detroit Red Wing when you consider all those young pieces coming? And it's like, hey, you have 22 million in cap space and not that many roster spots to fill. Go throw a boatload at Ekblad and hope he's a good influence on those young pieces? Or is that just doing the same thing over and over again?
I think you would just double down on the pain. He might be good for a year or two. I think his impact, particularly in Florida, he's been good in the playoffs, but he has been way less of an impact piece as the last 2 or 3 years have gone on. And it's not to say that he doesn't have game left, but I'm not handing him a 7-year deal on the free agent market and watching that age poorly and being hamstrung by that in sooner than you could possibly imagine time.
Yeah, and not exactly a ton of surplus draft picks in Detroit either. But with all the young players coming through their system, you wonder if they aren't maybe pushed a little bit to, hey, let's move some of the draft capital we do have to get a piece that lines up more with the age group there. All right, Frank, it is almost off-season time. Crazy enough, less than a month away from the draft, 5 weeks from free agency. So on that note, let's get into our first trade targets board of the summer. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, more than 85 locations across Canada. Through Charm and their sister brands, you can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program, and it all comes with their unbeatable pricing policy. They even have the Charm Diamond Flexity card, which allows you to get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. IceBreakers, Frank, and today we are talking about the trade targets board, and the name at number 1 is a highly skilled player who's very young and comes with team control. So I ask, why are the Buffalo Sabres looking to trade JJ Peterka?
They may not have a choice. I think it's gone sideways in Buffalo for Peterka and a handful of other Sabres players. I think they're unhappy with the lack of progress, and it's hard to really squint and see light at the end of the tunnel as they've hit 14 consecutive seasons without the playoffs. They've made one trade of consequence in the entire season. They retained their entire coaching staff and management group, which is kind of bizarre. And they're arriving at this moment in time where Peterka has some not just significant value, but leverage. He's a pending RFA. He doesn't have to sign a new deal with you. He's subject to an offer sheet on July 1 if he makes it that far. So I think he might be, with all due respect, Mitch Marner is the best free agent available this summer, but JJ Peterka is the best player on the trade market that is available. And when you add in his age, you're talking about significant value coming back to the Buffalo Sabres. So not a comfortable position to be in. I think it's going to take a lot of work to see JJ Peterka in a Sabres uniform in the fall. It's real hard for me at this point in time to see it. And it's going to be fascinating to watch it develop, because I think there's a number of teams that had expressed some significant interest when it came to the trade deadline in March. I don't think Buffalo was ready to consider it then. I don't know that they're going to have a choice now.
Number 2 is Chris Kreider. He's got a teammate on the board with him in Keandre Miller as well. But Kreider's fascinating to me because 34 years old, he failed to hit the 30-goal mark for the first time in 3 seasons. But I also sit there and go, yeah, $6.5 million cap hit as well. Can't be ignored. 1 more year after next season as well. But like 22 goals, that you can pencil him in for probably 20 again next year. But how do you think the Rangers go about moving him? Is it a problem for a problem kind of trade? Are they open to keeping money here on Kreider? How do you think this plays out?
I doubt they're open to keeping money, because Chris Drury has shown in his playbook that that's not something that he typically does. Remember, they were able to move off of Jacob Trouba without eating any salary. He's been a master at that. Barclay Goodrow, same thing. So he's been able to move players and somewhat seemingly problematic contracts out before. And I would think that Kreider, this was a really tough year for him, and he still ended up with 22 goals. He's a premier net front player. I mean, think about how this year went wrong. He had a busted hand that might have needed surgery in the offseason. He dealt with vertigo and a significant inner ear issue. And then on top of that, after your team started 12-7, your coach put out a league-wide memo saying that he's open to offers to move you. He's a career-long blue shirt. He's 11 goals away from second all-time in an original 6 franchise history. And yet Here he is potentially on the move. I look at that contract and say $6.5 million. If I'm a team starving for goals, I'm all over that because I'm thinking he's going to have a big bounce back year. And I think the other thing to keep in mind, though, is that once Chris Drury kind of makes this determination that he's going to find a way to move you, he probably will.
Yeah, and we saw that obviously during the season with Jacob Trouba. If you're a team starved for goals and you don't like Kreider, maybe you go down a couple of spots to Jonathan Marchessault. 1 year through his deal with the Nashville Predators, he's on your trade targets board, Frank. And listen, I guess we talked before about how Nashville might have to attach some assets to get rid of some money and free things up. Is Marchessault a guy that they could actually get some value for? And part two of my question would be, he has the partial no movement clause. How open is Marchessault to moving on after just 1 year?
I think he's pretty open. I think it's within reason. Like, isn't going to probably accept a deal to just about anywhere, depending on how he shapes his list. But I do think that when you look at his season, as down as it was for a Preds team that really, really struggled to score as a whole, he's another guy still ends up with 21 years in a bad year. And at $5.5 million, not an exorbitant contract by any stretch of the imagination. It's the term on it that's problematic for a 34-year-old. But if you're a team out there knowing that the cap is rising significantly and you have aspirations to take a big step forward next year, why can't Jonathan Marchessault be part of that in a 30 to 35 goal clip if you're betting high? I think it's a relatively low risk move, and I think he's open to the idea. I think in a perfect world, he would love to go to the Montreal Canadiens and go home. I don't know how open they are to that, given the term on his deal, but you could see him helping a pretty good offense already kind of continue to take that next step, and feels just like a true Marty St. Louis type player, doesn't he?
I mean, he does. The only thing that would make me nervous about that, 23 of his 56 points this year came on the power play. And we talked about how that Habs top unit looks so loaded already. Like, could you shoehorn Marchessault in there? Good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way to do it. And I would say, too, like, if the Preds, like, have you ever seen a team that struggled to score the way Nashville did, given the talent that they had? Had any other goals been going in, his point total would have been significantly higher at even strength, and even for himself.
Pat, if you could flash up the top 10 once again, there's one name on there, Frank, who is, I think a future Hall of Famer and all that. Erik Karlsson and the Pittsburgh Penguins. What can you tell us about that situation? The $10 million, that's a high number. 2 more years on it, but also still had 53 points this year. Looked great when he played with a bunch of skill at the Four Nations. Do you think there would be a market here for him at that full boat, or is Pittsburgh going to have to keep?
They're probably going to have to keep. I do think that there's a limited market. I think there's someone out there that's saying, hey, how can I find a way to get the power play quarterback that I need, right shot guy, someone that just has all the skill in the world. And when he's motivated and is on, I think he's obviously world class. We saw that at Four Nations, as you mentioned. I just think he's exactly what the Pittsburgh Penguins don't need. You've already got Chris Letang there. Chris Letang's game has obviously slowed quite a bit as well. And he's a guy that's going to be really difficult to trade. If the Penguins can find any sort of flexibility there, even if you have to retain just a move off of the deal, you're probably setting up your team for better success in the long haul. And I think, Karlsson's arriving at that moment at the exact time where he's probably not going to be that picky if he has an opportunity to win, because that's all he's looking for. So it's really about having that chance before his career is over.
Frank, I'm just going to naturally pivot this right into our Ask DFO segment, because we have a couple of questions from the chat about your list. One came in from Josh, and maybe this is a good one for people who are new to your trade targets boards, but he said, Kreider at 2, is this list based on skill or chances of moving? What goes into you crafting your list?
It's a little bit of both. I always say that it's a blend of a player's prominence, meaning the quality of player, with his likelihood of a move. So Kreider, I just think, as I mentioned with Chris Drury and the Rangers before, they put Jacob Trouba out there last summer. That deal didn't get done. They did finally pull that off. I think it was in November. So I have a feeling that with Kreider being out there already in such a public fashion, that they're going to find a way to try and make something happen this time around.
And then we got another one, and I guess this almost ties into it, but Elias Pettersson's all the way down at 20. And we had a Canucks fan before we got to the segment kind of say like, oh boy, is EP40 going to be on this board? He is, but he's so low. Explain that.
I think you just have to allow for the possibility. I think the Canucks are going into this open-minded. I think they're hoping that he has a huge bounce back summer with a proper offseason to train. They've given him a laundry list of things that they'd like to see him accomplish. I don't know how they're going to examine that, what the benchmarks are, what their thought process is in terms of actually pulling the trigger. But I think at the very least, they're going to be engaging in conversation with teams about what a market for him looks like. What could we get in return? Is it worth doing that and pulling the trigger and moving that contract off of our books before that no trade clause kicks in on July 1st? Or is this a spot where you just say, hey, you know what? We'll eat it. We'll see what happens and hope that he bounces back in a significant way that helps not just our franchise, but also in the end, his trade value. And so change of, certainly circumstances with a new coach on board and Adam Foote. And we'll see how Pettersson reacts because so much of it is on him. But I'd be shocked if the Canucks aren't even at least gauging that market to understand what it looks like.
We usually don't see a lot of trades before the Stanley Cup final wraps up. Last year, we saw 5 total, with 2 of them being big ones, the Dubois for Kemper swap and the Devils acquiring Jacob Markstrom. So we'll see how quickly we end up getting a trade this year. We'll keep this talk going, obviously, on tomorrow's show and tomorrow's special Wednesday edition of the DFO Rundown with yourself and Jason Gregor. But for now, let's get to our daily bets for the day, brought to you by Bet365. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs? At Bet365, they got you. Game props, player props, totals, money line. You can even bet on futures like the Stanley Cup champion. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs, must be 19 or older. I got 2 for tonight and maybe even 1 for tomorrow, I guess. But Leon Draisaitl goal, Oilers money line. Draisaitl held out of the goal column last game. The Oilers power play, very, very good on home ice compared to on the road. So I like Draisaitl to find the back of the net and the Oilers to take a commanding 3-0 series lead. And then Edmonton to win tonight, Florida to win tomorrow, plus 207. Frank, where do you come out on that?
I like it. I just don't know that 207 is enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's just straight money line. Edmonton's massive favorites tonight at minus 155. So I don't like playing that straight up, but you combine it with Draisaitl, combine it with the Panthers win tomorrow. I think either one gives you at least a little bit of juice. Let's wrap up the show, Frank. A little bit of garbage time and news from the IIHF, or I should say the IOC more likely. But Russia is going to remain banned for the 2026 Winter Olympics. So what do you make of this decision?
I totally understand it. I think this was necessary from an IOC standpoint because you're dealing with significant upheaval in the Winter Olympics. If you decide to have Russia in, I could see other federations. And this was the message that was delivered to the NHL and why they ended up going with a 4 nations face-off and leaving Russia, and some other countries out, was that they basically, Finland and Sweden had said to them, look, we're so close to Russia, Finland particularly, we've been attacked by Russia before. We're not going to 4 nations face off. We're not playing in a tournament for you if Russia is involved in participating. So I'd imagine there's other similar Olympic federations that are having those types of conversations with the IOC and saying, this isn't something that we could allow at this juncture in time, given the ongoing war, the unprovoked attack in Ukraine. And so, that part, look, it's been years now, and I think Russian athletes that have nothing to do with what's gone on are disappointed, and I get why, and I get the NHL's apprehension and the NHLPA because these are their constituents and players. They're not directly connected to this, most of them, and yet they don't have an opportunity to play, but such is life. That's how it works out sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that feels for him. There's a part of me that goes, Alex Ovechkin's profile picture on social media is him with Vladimir Putin. So I don't know. I mean, we could probably go a lot longer on this, but it's a totally justified decision. I like the way you said it, Frank. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, we're talking draft rankings, more trades, and potentially a pair of 3-1 series leads in each of the conference finals. Should be a good night down at Rogers Place in Edmonton, and we'll be right back here to break it all down tomorrow at noon Eastern. See you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.